President advises officials to protect people with non-communicable diseases from COVID-19. COVID-19 vaccine can only be issued during the second quarter of 2021, a statement from the World Health Organization. National Medicines Regulatory Authority documents reveal irregularities in granting approval to George Stewart to import antigen test kits, despite the revelations made by the Technical Review Committee. The renovation of the historic Digavapi Pagoda begins. A very good evening and welcome. This is Primetime News on TV1. On to your top story for the day. People residing in the Western Province have been prohibited from leaving the province with immediate effect until 12 midnight on the 15th of November. This was confirmed to Newsfirst by the head of the National Operations Centre for the Prevention of COVID-19, Lieutenant General Shavendra Silva. Now, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa has said that special attention must be drawn towards protecting those with non-communicable diseases from contracting COVID-19. He made this statement at the meeting of the COVID-19 task force held earlier today at the Presidential Secretariat.
At the meeting today, it was said that many people who suffer from non-communicable diseases such as heart disease, diabetes, kidney diseases and cancer are dying after contracting the virus without even displaying any symptoms. These people are tested for COVID-19 posthumously. The President informed the COVID-19 task force to immediately look into this matter and take steps to protect those with non-communicable diseases and also to carry out awareness programs on it.
Since this will be going on for some time, special attention must be paid to primary care at a regional level. Doctors must be assigned to regional hospitals and shortages at these dispensaries must be looked into. It is important to provide good health care from the dispensaries in the village levels. People will only go to large hospitals when they are in the final stages of the infection.
The President's media division said that discussions were held on the steps taken to prevent the spread of the virus at prisons. The President also advised the officials on limiting the movement of people in the Western Province, where a large number of COVID-19 cases have been detected.
According to Dr. Raisa Penze, the WHO representative to Sri Lanka, around 200 candidate vaccines to combat COVID-19 are in different stages of development, while 47 of them are in the human trial stage. Once data is obtained from these trials and regulatory authorities assess the safety and efficacy, manufacturing will commence. The WHO says, given this timeline, it expected doses to begin arriving in countries in the middle of 2021 in the second or third quarter. A limited number of vaccines may be available for high-risk groups starting from the first quarter of 2021. COVAX facility, coordinated by Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations and the WHO, is speeding up the search for an effective vaccine for all countries. The WHO adds that at the same time, it is supporting the building of manufacturing capabilities and buying supply ahead of time so that 2 billion doses can be equitably distributed by the end of 2021. It says the government of Sri Lanka has signed up to the COVAX facility under the AMC category. AMC eligible economies would share the costs of COVID-19 vaccines. Dr. Pense advises the general public to avoid the 3 C's: crowded places, close contact settings, and confined and enclosed places.
It was the work of 2 companies that led to this possibly viable vaccine for COVID-19. The companies that created this vaccine have said that they hope to apply for emergency approval for the vaccine by the end of this month. Let's say the company gets emergency approval by the beginning of December. When they get the approval, they have to mass produce the vaccine. It will take about 3 to 6 months to produce the doses that we need. Only a limited number of doses of these vaccines will be produced, and there will be a competition to get them. So unless the World Health Organization intervenes, small countries like ours will not have too much of an opportunity to get the vaccines. According to this US company, by the end of this year, only 50 million doses of this vaccine can be produced. Out of that, England has already ordered 30 million doses. After that, the world only has 20 million doses. According to the information that we have received, each person must get 2 doses of this vaccine. 1 dose is not enough. The doses must be administered 3 weeks apart. If 1 dose is given today, the next must be given in 3 weeks. The company says that a person will get 90% protection from the virus after receiving the second dose. The company has not yet provided accurate details on how long the protection provided by the vaccine would last. We are not in a position that we can rely on this vaccine 100% when planning on how we are going to face this virus in the future. This vaccine will only be readily available by March or April next year. So the advice that was provided to the general public so far continues to be applicable.
ජනතාවට මේ දක්වා දුන්න උපදෙස් කිසිවක් අමතක නොකර ඉදිරියට යාම තමයි කළ යුත්තේ.
Possibly accepting the fact that the threat of COVID-19 cannot be avoided if people are not vigilant, the CEO of the National Medicines Regulatory Authority, or the NMRA, displayed this particular notice at the main entrance of the NMRA on the 15th of last month. The notice reads, taking into account the safety of those employed at NMRA, all transactions should be conducted online or through the automation system until further notice. Thus, to this day, registering a drug or any medical equipment can only be done online. However, on the 19th of last month, a rapid antigen test kit imported by George Stewart Health Private Limited had been granted approval by the NMRA in stark contrast to the notice displayed. The required documents had been submitted along with 25 test kits for consideration at the time of registration, and the technical evaluation has taken place the very next day on the 20th of October. The report issued by the evaluator on the medical device in question cites 6 shortcomings of the test. According to the evaluation, the certificate issued by the manufacturer of the test kit should be submitted to the NMRA prior to sale of the test kit. However, it has not been submitted. The 25 test kits presented for evaluation not bearing a proper packaging is also a major cause for concern. What is perhaps the most important comment on the evaluation sheet is the comment which reads, quote, product should be validated in MRI and reports should be submitted before obtaining import licenses, unquote. Against a backdrop where a number of ambiguities have been highlighted on the evaluation sheet, the NMRA has certified the test kit. It is evident through the seal which is visible on the document and a signature which could be identified as that of the Secretary of the Medical Device Evaluation Committee of the NMRA. Surprisingly, the committee last convened on the 7th of October. Is it not a cause for concern that the private agency had imported a stock of these test kits a mere 2 days following the report by the technical evaluator highlighting a number of shortcomings? The CEO of the NMRA has placed his signature on the technical evaluation report, agreeing for the test kit to be sold to healthcare institutions at a price of 1,146 rupees per test kit. According to the provisions of the National Medicines Regulatory Authority Act No. 5 of 2015, if any deficiencies are found in the technical evaluation after submitting any drug or medical device for registration, approval should not be granted to register the drug or device in question until the relevant deficiencies are addressed. Aren't the authorities toying with the lives of the general public by not ensuring that the test kits imported by George Stewart's comply with the provisions of the National Medicines Regulatory Authority Act? On the 2nd of May 2019, the Court of Appeal issued a ruling upholding the integrity of the NMRA and in many ways realizing a long-held dream of renowned pharmacologist Professor Senaka Bibile. The Court of Appeal, through its ruling, annulled the appointment of the chairman of the NMRA at the time. The ruling was heavily influenced by the fact that the person in question was a stakeholder of a pharmaceutical testing company in Sri Lanka. However, the person who was dismissed from his role through the Court of Appeal continues to function in that role to date. Was the controversial rapid antigen test kit granted approval by the NMRA due to the person in question functioning as the chairman of the NMRA? Minister of Health, for your attention.
Political forces and health authorities expressed their views on the rapid antigen test kits today.
Businessmen with political influence are using this pandemic as a money-making endeavor. Chairman of George Stewart Dilip Jayavida claimed that it was a result of normal human behavior and asked why people opposed it. Our problem is that it was imported before the pricing strategy was announced by the government. How can that be done when the validation was announced yesterday? How was the permission granted in less than a month? This is enough to understand how political influence works. They did not import rice or dal. They weren't rations. They were test kits for a problem messing with people's lives. We know that the people behind this transaction value money more than people's lives, especially when the WHO was making arrangements to donate hundreds of rapid antigen tests from Netherlands to Sri Lanka. How was this organization able to import this in such a short period? It is highly unlikely to believe that this is not a result of political influence. I do not think our society is that naive.
නෙමෙයි කියලා පිළිගන්න තරම් මම හිතන්නේ අපේ සමාජයේ ඉතිහාස අත්දැකීම් අඩු සමාජයක් කියලා.
අපි මේ කතා කරන ඉන්නත සම්බන්ධයෙන් ගත්තාම ලෝක සෞඛ්‍ය සංවිධානයේ තමන්ගේ
If the WHO has in fact recommended to its member states to use this testing method as a viable test, and if a validation process is underway in our country, they should release the report immediately without any further delays. We don't know why the validation test report was not released. We would like to question the specialists who are conducting this validation test as to why they are not releasing the report.
කරන මේ විශේෂඥයන්ගේ ඇයි මේ වාර්තාව එළියට දාන්නේ නැත්තේ?
අද වෙනකොට අපිට පේනවා සෞඛ්‍ය අමාත්‍යාංශයේ ඒ පිළිබඳව කිසිදු සාකච්ඡා.
At present, we see that the Ministry of Health is planning to distribute these rapid test kits to various parties without any discussion, just like what was done in the past. They are doing it here without any centralized control. At present, the content of the validation report on these test kits is not known. As the Right to Information Act has not been repealed yet, we have made a request from the Secretary to the Ministry of Health in this regard. At the moment, we have a bigger problem on if these test kits will be brought in large quantities unnecessarily and released to society. This is bigger than the issue on which the company imports these test kits. We are concerned that there is a lot of room to bring these test kits unnecessarily and then to use them unnecessarily so as to get various parties to do these things and cause confusion.
මේ කොරෝනා වසංගතයේ තත්ත්වය ව්‍යාකූල කර ගැනීමට බොහෝ ඉඩකඩක් තියෙනවා කියන එක.
අපි කියන්නේ කොහේ හැදුවත්
Wherever a product is made, it must be subject to a trial test validation in Sri Lanka before we decide to use it in Sri Lanka. It is wrong to import 200,000 kits without any validation tests being conducted on these test kits. Remember this mistake. We are not saying that bringing down antigen test kits is wrong. We need them. They must be brought down. But the method they brought it down is wrong. When 30 to 35 companies submitted requests, why were only 2 of these companies allowed to import them?
4 people died of COVID-19 in the country today. The deceased were aged 80, 45, 40 and 68. A PCR test conducted on an 80-year-old resident of Pandura posthumously revealed that the victim died of a heart attack caused by the COVID-19 infection. A 40-year-old resident of Colombo 11 also passed away upon admission to the Colombo National Hospital. He was tested positive for the virus posthumously. It was revealed that he died of a heart attack caused by complications of the COVID-19 infection. A 45-year-old resident of Kalaniya died of a heart attack caused by COVID-19 complications while receiving treatment at the Hambantota District Hospital. The COVID-19 death toll in the country rose to 45. The total number of COVID-19 patients in the country stands at 15,024. 646 patients were discharged after they made a full recovery. The total number of recoveries in the country stands at 10,183.
Do not forget the fact that there are more than 50,000 people in quarantine centres. We have not eradicated COVID-19 as of yet. According to scientific analysis of the spread of this virus, at the moment the spread is at level 3. If the spread reaches level 4, we would have reached a level of community spread, and then we will not know as to where the virus emerges from. Looking at the current spread and formation of clusters at different places of the country, there is a possibility that we might enter the 4th stage, the spread of the virus. Something that is frequently being reported these days is that senior citizens are falling prey to the virus at their own homes. You can die of various causes when you are feeble and old, but a proper scientific study should be conducted to assess whether they have tested positive for COVID-19.
එක හේතුවකින්ද ඔබ මිය ගියොත් මල බෙර නැහැ මතක බන පාන්සු කූලේ නැහැ සුදු කොටි වැල් නැහැ ಗುಣ කතන නැහැ
විශේෂයෙන්ම හැම කෙනෙක්ම නිරන්තරයෙන් අහන ප්‍රශ්නයක් තමයි.
A question which is frequently posed to us is when areas under lockdown will be reopened. That decision does not lie with health or defence authorities. If the residents of those areas maintain discipline and the discovery of patients reduce, we can reopen those areas. But if patients continue to be discovered and residents of those areas continue to travel here and there, disregarding travel restrictions, we will have to extend the lockdown.
එතකොට ලොක්ඩවුන් සීමාව තවත් දීර්ඝ කරන්න වෙයි.
Meanwhile, an awareness program was held in Panadura today on how to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Masks were distributed at the Panadura bus stand, and senior DIG in charge of the Western Province, Deshabandhu, was also present. Our correspondent said that the Panadura bus stand was then disinfected.
People in isolated areas have stopped coming into contact with ordinary people. After 7 days, if the virus is found to be under control, these controls will be removed as per the recommendations of the health departments. If not, it will have to be extended. If there are new cases of this nature discovered, we will take action accordingly.
SDIG Deshabandhu then proceeded to Bastion Ma of the Colombo and observed the transport of passengers by buses. The senior DIG also participated in a program at the Hunupitiya Gangarama temple in Colombo. Masks were distributed to police officers on duty in the Western Province.
In more local news, now a decision has been reached to temporarily shift the Colombo Manning Market to the new market complex that is under construction in Paliagoda. The decision was taken at a meeting held between the relevant subject minister and the Manning Market's General Trade Union earlier today.
Colombo Manning Market was shut down for 3 weeks after several COVID-19 cases were identified from the marketplace. The market was to be opened last Monday after it had been disinfected. However, permission to do this was refused, and a large group who work at the marketplace were subjected to PCR tests yesterday. Meanwhile, a meeting of the Presidential Task Force on Economic Revival and Poverty Alleviation was held at the Temple Trees yesterday. During the discussion, it was decided to move the Colombo Manning Market to a land owned by the State Engineering Corporation. The ministers in charge of the subject also visited the site yesterday to look into the possibility of doing so. However, the businessmen at the Manning Market were against this idea.
We will
not accept this land under any circumstances. Since 1985, every government tried to take this market to Orugodavatta. We directly told them that we will not move out of Colombo, and it had been the same. This is our heritage. If there is any market that is socially integrated and one that has a history of more than 100 years, it is the Manning Market. No matter who tries to disgrace this market, no one will succeed.
A market complex has been under construction in Paliagoda for several years as per a government plan to relocate the Colombo Manning Market from Petta. Officials attached at the Manning Market General Trade Union had agreed to complete the construction work and move to the site during a discussion with the minister in charge of the subject today.
After a meeting with the Honourable District Secretary and the Minister of Agriculture, the decision was taken for us to move to the new market in Paliagoda. We would like to remind the farmers that we will meet them soon at that market. We can see that good business can be done at that marketplace. We would like to remind everyone to meet with all the vendors and customers at the Manning Market.
A good vegetable produce has been yielded in Valley Mother and surrounding areas. These farmers have spent their sweat, blood and tears to grow these vegetables, including beans, carrot and potato. However, farmers point out that they do not receive a fair price for their produce, and therefore there is no point in taking their produce to the market.
They are asking to purchase our produce for 20 rupees. When we sell it at that price and pay commissions to the vendors at the market, we are left with about 17 rupees. These vegetables are now left to rot in the rain.
Meanwhile, farmers in Tamuttegama and surrounding areas are also facing many hardships. Many farmers are not harvesting their crops as they are not receiving a fair price for their produce in the market. Farming is pointless. We cannot earn anything. The time is right for us to harvest our crops, but there is no point in doing that. Our produce is rotting on the trees. We cannot get a fair price for our produce.
We have to abandon all of this and throw it to the cattle. That will at least give us some merit in the afterlife. We can be happy for that at least. There is no point in doing any of this.
Farmers in Kandy also spoke of their plight as they too have not got a fair price for their produce in the market.
We cannot even recover the cost we incurred to purchase fertilizer and the wastage to harvest our crops. We are helpless.
Meanwhile, the opposition alleges that the government has failed to control the rise in the prices of goods.
The price of a coconut was fixed and a Gazette notification issued. The price of a coconut today is between 100 and 110 rupees. The government must understand that a Gazette notification cannot control the price of coconuts. A tin of salmon is rupees 240. 1 kilogram of sprats is around 500 to 580. 500 grams of big onions is 550 rupees. 1 kilogram of rice is 120 rupees. An egg is 22 rupees. 1 kilogram of chicken is 650 rupees and 1 kilogram of sugar is 160 rupees. The government is claiming that the Gazette notifications have been issued to reduce the cost of living. If sales aren't made that way, the government says that the law will be enforced. However, the law is not respected or followed by anyone these days.
We have received information that there are salmon tins with a high percentage of arsenic at Sathosa stores. Usually a salmon tin has to have an arsenic percentage of 1%, but we have received reports that salmon tins at Sathosa stores have more than 2% of arsenic in them. This is a dangerous situation.
We now cross over for a short commercial break. Stay with News First.
The first step. Thanks so much for helping me.
You're most welcome.
මට උදව් කළාට බොහොම ස්තුතියි.
උදව් කිරීමට ලැබීම ගැන සතුටුයි.
எனக்கு உதவியமைக்கு மிக்க நன்றி.
உதவி கிடைத்ததுகிட்டு மகிழ்கின்றே.
The first step.
Welcome back to the news. In more headline-making news, renovation work on the historic Digavapi Stupa and the surrounding sacred area in Ampara commenced today.
Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa was the chief guest at the ceremony to commence renovations on the stupa. State Minister Vimalavira Disanayaka, Governor of the Eastern Province Anuradha Yahampat and Secretary of Defence retired Major General Kamal Gunaratne were also present. The Prime Minister, who engaged in religious rites, then commenced the renovation work of the stupa amidst the chanting of Pirit. The chief incumbent of the Digavapi Raja Mahaviharaya, Venerable Mahaoya Sobitatero, also preached a sermon at the event.
Despite various attempts during the last period, we were not successful in repairing and renovating this stupa at any time. We would like to remind you at this juncture that this is a very historic occasion. The preparation for the reconstruction of this stupa, similar to how it was built by the kings, is indeed historic.
The historic Digavapi sacred site is one of the 16 places of worship in the Eastern Province. The Prime Minister planted a nar tree at the location, symbolizing the tree planting program to be carried out on the grounds of the temple for the beautification of the Viharaya. The pinnacle, the base and the temple beside the Digavapi stupa are being constructed under the guidance of Venerable Agulgamwe Aryanandathera of the Nauyana Aranya Senasana. The construction work is being carried out with the financial contributions of the Nauyana Public Trustee Board, and a cheque for 76 million rupees was presented to Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa. Meanwhile, a group consisting the Prime Minister and the Defence Secretary visited the Muhudu Mahaviharaya in Pothuwil this afternoon and called on the Chief Incumbent and the Chief Prelate of the Eastern Province, Venerable Varakapala Indasirithera.
We are doing everything we need to do for the Muhudu Mahaviharaya. The government agent is here. The governor is also here. We have to hold several discussions with the people in the area. We will discuss them amicably and resolve those issues. We hope to act soon.
Venerable Thero, you had some thoughts on the extent of the boundaries and the 72 acres.
We are definitely on 72 acres, but what was discussed here was that we would do it step by step. In particular, the Secretary of Defence here, Major General Kamal Gunratna, came to us and gave us the security detail with the assurance that he would protect this land, not allowing a single grain of sand to be moved off these grounds. The second was that the archaeological reserve was said to be 30 acres. Regardless, I must remind that the primary responsibility of these rulers is to protect the Buddha Sasana and this country.
On to a story which has sparked a major discourse in society at present. A media briefing on the new circular on forest management was held in Colombo today. Bandula Harishchandra, Secretary to the Ministry of Wildlife and Forest Conservation, spoke at the media briefing.
The Department of Forest Conservation and the Department of Wildlife clearly govern reserve forests, proposed forest reserves, nature reserves, forest parks, forest routes, sanctuaries, nature reserves and rural forests in the country. Accordingly, we drafted our Ministry's Circular number 1 of 2020 and submitted a cabinet paper to the cabinet as a joint proposal in line with our existing methodology. The current forest cover in our country is 29.2%. Then, in calculating our forest cover, these remaining areas are not counted. We refer this to a government department that deals with protected forests, forest reserves, proposed forest reserves and national reserves, sanctuaries, wild elephant management reserves and any other statutory matter, law or regulation as managed by the Department of Wildlife Management. The government still retains ownership of the remaining forests that do not belong to an institution or a ministry. This will allow district secretaries and divisional secretaries to use it for economic and other productive purposes without harming the environment, wildlife resources and forests. But we will limit this. We believe this is something that should happen in a country. As the allegation is currently being levelled at our ministry, we will talk about the MCC agreement. That agreement has nothing to do with our work. This circular was taken based on the systematic evolution of a decision process that began in 1998. The office of the co-chairman of the Batticaloa District Development Coordinating Committee was declared open earlier today. The event was attended by parliamentarian Sivanesature Chandrakanthan. MP Sivanesature Chandrakanthan, who is in remand custody, arrived at the location this morning amid tight security. The Batticaloa High Court had recently issued an order allowing MP Chandrakanthan to attend the District Development Committee meetings with the approval of the Commissioner General of Prisons. The Superintendent of Prisons for Batticaloa informed the High Court in writing yesterday that the Commissioner General of Prisons had approved the request made by parliamentarian Sivanesature Chandrakanthan to attend the District Development Committee coordinating meeting. The MP also participated in religious ceremonies held at the Sri Siddhi Vinayagar Kovil at the District Secretariat premises this morning. The office of the co-chairman of the Batticaloa District Development Coordinating Committee was then declared open. I began my duties today as the co-chairman of the Batticaloa District Development Committee. I am happy about that. There was a lot of criticism that this meeting was not held for a long time. Therefore, this meeting is scheduled to be held on the 13th of next month. Meanwhile, an office of the Prime Minister's District Coordinating Secretary for Ampara and Batticaloa, Vinayagamurthy Muralidharan, was opened in Navidanveli, Kalmunai today. Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa has given me the opportunity to serve the people even though I did not get a parliamentary seat. The people of Ampara have voted for me. Therefore, I asked the Prime Minister to give me the opportunity to serve them. Then he said that he would give me not only Ampara but also Batticaloa. I have been entrusted with the responsibility of providing his administrative service to the people in both these districts. There are more than 90 institutions under the Prime Minister. We can work with all those institutions. On to news from the United States. Anthony Blinken, a veteran diplomat and long-time confidant of President-elect Joe Biden, is expected to play a senior role as the incoming administration looks to jettison President Donald Trump's America First agenda and restore relations with U.S. allies.
With his decades of experience at the White House and as the former number 2 at the State Department, Blinken is widely seen in Washington as a natural fit to be Biden's national security advisor or a possible pick for Secretary of State. Blinken's top government roles included serving as Deputy National Security Advisor from 2013 to 2015 under President Barack Obama and U.S. Deputy Secretary of State from 2015 to 2017. He was also pictured in the White House Situation Room with Obama and cabinet principals during the 2011 U.S. military raid that killed Osama bin Laden. Biden, who was vice president under Obama, pledged before the November 3rd election to rejoin global commitments, stand up for U.S. allies and, quote-unquote, make it clear for our adversaries the days of cozying up to dictators are over, unquote. A majority of Republicans say they don't believe the United States presidential election was free and fair, as Secretary of State Mike Pompeo dismissed Joe Biden's victory and instead flagged a second Trump administration.
There will be a smooth transition to a second Trump administration. All right, we're ready. The world is watching what's taking place here. We're going to count all the votes. When the process is complete, there'll be electors selected. There's a process. The Constitution lays it out pretty clearly. The world should have every confidence that the transition necessary to make sure that the State Department is functional today, successful today, and successful with the president who's in office on January 20th, a mid-afternoon, will also be successful.
Trump, meanwhile, tweeted he would ultimately win the race that all major TV networks have forecast he lost. Republican President Donald Trump's campaign said he would file a lawsuit in Michigan requesting the results of the U.S. election in the state not be certified until it could be verified that votes were cast lawfully. The Trump campaign has filed in an effort to keep hopes of a second term for Trump alive after former Vice President Joe Biden became president-elect last Saturday. Meanwhile, Joe Biden has said President Trump's refusal to concede victory in last week's White House election is quote-unquote an embarrassment. But the US president-elect, who has been making contact with foreign leaders, insisted nothing would stop the transfer of power. As the US Supreme Court justices signaled they are unlikely to strike down the Obamacare health care law in a legal challenge brought by Texas and 17 other Republican-governed states and joined by President Donald Trump's administration, President-elect Joe Biden vowed to protect Americans' health care regardless of the top court decision.
Regardless of the outcome of this case, I promise you this, beginning on January 20th, the Vice President-elect Harris and I, we're going to do everything in our power to ease the burden of health care on you and your families. I promise you that. As I said, I will protect your health care like as with my own family.
Shifting your attention to Hong Kong, all of Hong Kong's pro-democracy lawmakers have resigned after 4 of their colleagues were disqualified.
Beijing passed a resolution allowing the city's government to disqualify politicians deemed a threat to national security. Shortly afterwards, Hong Kong's Democratic Party chairman Wu Chi-wai told reporters that they would leave the city's legislature. He said, quote, "We will stand with our colleagues who are disqualified," end quote. The territory's leader, Chief Executive Carrie Lam, is pro-Beijing and is supported by the central government. The move is being seen as the latest attempt by China to restrict Hong Kong's freedom.
And with that, it's a wrap of primetime news on TV1. For the Newsfirst team, I'm Zayamal Ratnaik along with our sign language interpreter Brian De Cruz. Take care, stay safe and good night.